your home with BuildAid on Mix 93.8. Proudly brought to you by AfriSam. AfriSam, creating concrete possibilities.
We're back. BuildAid on Mix 93.8 FM. Good evening. As usual, in the studio and back with us, Kay and Simon looking after the desk. We've also got Ian videographing the show. Tonight I'm going to be chatting to Lisa Reynolds. Lisa was one of the architects, if I can use that term, of putting the energy efficiency regulations and guidelines together. And Kay, what's up?
Well, Al's been taking everyone on a real journey back in time tonight, which is really cool. And we're going to be doing quite a lot of that this year. We're going to focus on Jersey and it's the amazing city that we live in and all the exciting things that are happening about regeneration, etc. So tonight I've got a building that is pretty iconic, and you're going to guess what building it is. It's a national monument, and it was completed in 1915. The cornerstone was placed by Prince Alfred in 1910, and here's a clue. You may have gone there to vote yes in March 1992. If you know which building we're talking about, send us an SMS on 41348.
So we're going to have a lot of fun this year, okay? Talking to people that know things about Joburg. But we also spend some time driving through scruffy little towns in the Free State and the Eastern Cape. And I call them scruffy because they have become scruffy, but they're still amazingly interesting and can teach us a lot about our history and architecture. BuildAid, brought to you by AfriSam. My guest this evening, Lisa Reynolds. Thanks so much for coming to chat to us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Lisa, it's been a few years since we had a chat,
Yes.
And it was essentially about SANS 10400XA, and we'll get into that in a mo. Okay. And you were working with Saint-Gobain. You were with them quite a long time.
I was. I actually worked for them in one form or the other for 19 and a half years, and I have decided to go on my own to pursue my passions, which is obviously still the standards, still the energy efficiency side, and still the green side.
And the name of your organization? It's
Green BDG, which stands for Green Building Design Group.
I have a note here, Lisa, that it's a non-profit organization. So you're following your passion and looking after everyone.
It's in my nature, I think. But yes, it's just there's a lot of work to be done. The government's got a lot of plans to green their buildings, and I think they want to walk their talk. And as with all good plans, the plans and the ideas are good, but the implementation is the place where we really can get stuck in. And that's where we want to help, is to do the implementation of making public buildings green, encouraging all buildings to be green.
So one of your tasks or objectives is probably getting people to communicate with each other.
Yes. That is the hugest part. I think if you look even within within the government, within different building sectors, there's a lot of people doing good things, and somehow they are missing each other, and there needs to be a platform where they communicate.
Some years ago we chatted, in fact probably about 5 or 6 years ago, we were chatting about SANS 10400, the new energy efficiency regulations, and you were one of the authors, architects of these regulations, and nobody at that point knew anything about it.
Yeah.
And we were always saying, but the Europeans are ahead of us and so on. Now we've learned a lot in the last 5 years, but an obvious question is, how has the market adapted to these regulations?
Look, I think we've still got a long way to go. I think the first version of SANS 10400XA has got its errors in it, and a lot of it we had to learn by implementation. And also I think there's still a lot of education that's needed in the public to understand what an R value is. What is a performance of a wall? What's the performance of a ceiling? And how does it affect you? You know, the thing about building this way is that it has payback. And so people look at the initial upfront cost, not really realizing that the lifetime cost of running this building will be lower because of what you put into the building. It's important to know that with my new venture, I'm not giving up on SANS 10400XA. I always say I'm like Jacob Marley's ghost with this ball that says 10400XA that's going to forever follow me. But with every good standard throughout the world, after so many years, you update the standard. So we're in the process of rewriting it. We're looking at the numbers, the minimum energy consumption and demand, and those numbers are going to be lowered, maximum energy demand and maximum energy consumption, and also the performance of the walling is going to be improved, and if the flooring is exposed, that's also going to be improved.
Okay, we'll come back and get into that a little bit more. This is BuildAid on Mix 93.8 FM. My name's Graham Alexander. I'm chatting to Lisa Reynolds. We're talking energy efficiency, regulations and so on. Let me get stuck on that word for a sec, regulation.
Yes.
It's sometimes scary. And we mentioned the homeowner, disrespectfully referred to as a consumer sometimes to get a point across, is that word can sometimes trip us up straight away. Because it's viewed as a lot of writing and technical stuff, and we don't want to get into that. And it's not that complicated.
No, it isn't.
But it does need to be written down as a regulation.
Yes.
Is there somewhere, Lisa, where the homeowner can, somewhere in the future, and maybe not the too distant future, get hold of information that is completely understandable? There's a roof, and it has a water tank under it, and it's got a, I'm talking about water now.
Yes.
Or a window does X, Y, Z, and if you turn it this way, it'll do this, and a kid could understand it. Are there two forms of a regulation? One is written down for rules and laws, and the other one is recorded differently.
Well, as we've been talking, I think that is one of the plans, that we need to look at a consumer-based book, and I say consumer with the greatest respect, because I think that they really do know what they want, and sometimes it's just not, they're not sure how to do it. So I think, as I mentioned to you in the break, that when I do training, I try not to speak standardese or technolese, because I think, it's a language on its own, and I do try and speak normal English, and I think that's what we need to give the consumer is information in normal English and saying to them, this is how you do it, this is what you must look for, and this is what the performance is. Obviously, there'll be some technical information, because you can't work out, you need to know what the solar heat gain of a window is, or the transmittance.
So sometimes you've got to do a bit of maths.
You have to know what the thermal resistance of an insulation is. But besides that, once you understand those concepts, and they're not difficult, it's easy to look at the total home and get it right.
As I mentioned earlier, most of the homeowners that we chat to and collaborate with buy into this. No problem. We just want to know, how do you get involved? Obviously, what it costs, that's a factor. But we've proven time and time again that the cost is actually not an issue.
No.
It sorts itself out at the end of the day. Videos have become a very powerful way of communicating information, and we've recently got quite involved in this, and I'm going to get more involved in it from a training point of view, so that information is not only available to a far greater audience, but it's in a format that we're hoping most people can understand. Do you think there may be room for that in a regulation?
No. Look, maybe not in the regulation itself, but I mean, there's nothing stopping us doing a guide to the standard, sort of user guide to the standard and things like that. And, you're talking about when people design their homes, there's so much technology. I mean, if you look at even the drawing programs that you can get, and I don't know anybody who designs a kitchen even without moving cupboards around, and just an interesting example, we worked with the Department of Housing a long time ago, when it's still called Department of Housing, and they were looking at building sort of 36 square meter houses, and we cut to scale furniture and showed how difficult it was to get the furniture and the people in the same time. and also with that showed them sort of a thermal calculation on how difficult it is to get such a small building to become energy efficient, because the walls then play a greater role because of the sort of surface area of the whole house. And giving them greatest respect, they changed the minimum size quite quickly after that, and increased it to 40 squares, and I think it is even higher now. So, it's there's ways of doing it. And as I said, back in those days, we actually drew little beds and couches and everything to fit them into rooms.
The technology today, a program like Revit and BIM, Building Information Modeling, which is something we've been playing around with over the last year. Unfortunately, South Africa, and particularly the residential building, we're sort of lagging behind a little bit. But there is that kind of technology available. But something I think I certainly need to be careful of this evening is not paint a picture that we're waiting for information. There's a lot of stuff out there.
Absolutely.
And what would your advice be to the homeowner, to the building contractor, and maybe even to some architects? Where do you find this information?
Sure, that is a difficult, because it is spread out all over the place, and I think that was one of the things we're looking at is and going back to the sort of our green building design group, is we saw a gap in the implementation side, because again, there's a lot on the theory, there's a lot on how to do, what to do, but how to roll it out is problematic. But if you really want to know, I think you'll go to your architect. And if they don't know, they should go to the regulator.
I was going to say, your first...
so
we're unfortunately running out of time, and I hate to even say that. But your first port of call should be your architect.
Absolutely.
And your architect knows this stuff, and he doesn't know the stuff, he'll find out.
Yes.
There's also the thing that we all know called Google, and it's amazingly friendly if you know to type the right stuff in there. And I think what's important, Lisa, as we've said, the regulation, we use that word in this long thing called SANS 10400 XA, and sounds frightening. It's not frightening.
No.
It's pretty simple, and you buy into it, you can make your home a lot easier to live in and save a lot of money.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the energy that you save. You make a healthier building, if you make more productive buildings, one of the big things on energy efficiency, if energy efficient houses, the indoor air quality is much better. So there's less asthma and lung problems and things like that. So there's a lot of really good stuff that's knock-on effects.
Before I say goodbye to you, Lisa, let's check this building. What is it?
Please.
The Johannesburg City Hall. Well done to everyone who got it right. Now, just a quick note from a listener who said you can't go on a Sunday afternoon window shopping in Joburg City Centre like you used to do, but we're going to tell you all the places that are being regenerated in the future and this year, so soon you will be able to do that quite safely and happily and have a drink and a jaw.
We're going to talk about all that good stuff, because we unfortunately read a lot of bad stuff, which is also important, but it's not as important as the good stuff. Thank you to Kay for looking after us in the show. Thanks to Simon on the desk, and to Ian on the video side, but a special thanks to my guest, Lisa Reynolds. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Up next is The Greatest Show on Earth. We do this every Wednesday between 6 and 7. Talk to you next week. Ciao.
Your home with BuildAid on Mix brings you all sorts of interesting info about building. Graham Alexander chats to different guests every Wednesday evening between 6 and 7. Proudly brought to you by AfriSam. AfriSam, creating concrete possibilities.